Ayo! Welcome everyone to another episode of the Mere Mortals Meanderings. We're coming to you live from Brazil here on the 14th of September 2024 in Brazilian time. Juan touching his mic over there in Brisbane, I hear. How are you going, Juan? Doing it again?
15th of September, so I'm in the future. Brizzy, Juan here. Hello folks, Mere Mortalites. Welcome.
And so does anyone, and this includes Juan, at home know why today is a special day? Come on, Juan. You got to get this one. You're hurting my heart if you can't get this.
The 14th of September?
No, 15th of September. 15th of September.
Nah, no idea.
It is officially the 5th anniversary of the podcast today. Let's go!
Oh, it was exactly on the 15th.
Mm-hmm, it was. That was when we released
I did
our
know
very
it was
first
in
episode.
September 2019. I didn't realize it was exactly on the 15th.
I'm pretty sure it was the 15th, yeah. So yeah, we are officially 5 years in, which is kind of crazy, to be honest. And time, this times very, very nicely with what I wanted to talk about today, which is, I guess, this period of my life ending. And I think for other people as well around me, I think it's like the mood gets in the air and we're all like, oh, there's a change coming. I know Lucas in the chat feels this as well. So I wanted to focus on perhaps like not necessarily new beginnings, but if you're going to look back at previous periods and our own life, techniques, methods that might be of interest and use to others. So I've been kind of reflecting on this a bit, and I wanted to get your thoughts on this. So if I had to ask you, Juan, how would you remember, what goes through your head, the process of recalling this information, the name of the best friend of your first girlfriend? How does that go about in your head? How would you work that out?
The name of my best friend's girlfriend?
No, the name of your first girlfriend's best friend.
I guess sequentially in my brain, it goes to remembering who the girlfriend was, and then secondly, what her best friend's name was.
So it's pretty basic. There's no complicated series of maneuvers that you take to get there. So for example, you're not
Correct.
You're not going, okay, well, my first girlfriend was I met her or at like the soccer schoolyard or something. She had brown hair, so that helps me remember her name. Her best friend had brown hair as well. His name was X. There's no like complicated series.
Correct. No complicated series.
Okay, because I was asking this to some other people, a very similar question, and I was going, okay, for me, I actually tend to do things based on location. So what immediately goes through my mind is, okay, my first girlfriend, I met her when I was in Mackay, and so that was around 2014, and so I would have met her. It's actually I looked at some old notes of mine recently, just going over some old, not yearly goals, but it was kind of like year in review that I'd done in the past. And man, I can't believe how much I used to write down. Old Kyrin was crazy, or I guess young Kyrin was, man, that guy.
Write down as in like on your journal.
Oh yeah, man. I have so many notes. It's crazy just going through these old folders and being like, damn, man, I had notes about motivational things. I had notes about yearly stuff. I had notes about monthly stuff. I had so many just varied notes going on. And yeah, it actually reminded me of a couple of things that I'd completely forgotten that I'd written down or done in the especially 2013, 2014, and I might tell a couple of them soon. But yeah, my process almost goes like location, time, person, and then link to that person if I had to answer that question. And so I find this just kind of interesting going, oh, okay, so this is how my brain sort of works with recalling information. And, when I get to a later stage in life, I'd like to be able to recall more things from my life. It'd certainly be a shame to get to like age 80 and just go like, damn, I've forgotten what I used to be like at 26, or what I was kind of doing when I was 33 years old, or for example. And so I'm kind of trying to develop some tools and techniques to help me remember better in the future, because I think it's kind of fun and nice looking back nostalgically upon these things. So do you have you thought about this at all, Juan? And is that something that would concern you, or be a blip on your radar in the future?
In terms, well, this is the thing. The memory recall depended on some things, I guess, moving forward, especially now that maybe I'm a little bit of on the inverse, right? Where if I go back and review things I was noting down when I was younger, like at around that time when I had my first girlfriend, it was negligible. The most I was noting down was more so on the front of training. That was really it. And now as time has progressed, there's a lot more things that I'm documenting and noting down and putting together, more tools, more practices that help me remember more. So as far as it can be in terms of what I'm doing to try and support it, kind of maximizing for that. So I worry less that I've been forgetting certain things, but I'd also be willing to say that there's almost an expectation that I am going to forget certain things, even if they are real big highlights, that I might just not capture, and kind of being okay with that, being totally fine. Like if in kind of that question, the original question you posed of, if in 15 years time I couldn't recall my first girlfriend's best friend's name, I couldn't give a rat's ass. Right?
Yeah, correct.
It's so unimportant. Who cares about that?
What about Vienna's first baby steps, for example? Let's say Vienna's first baby steps, for example. Is that something that...
Well, and that's the thing. That's the thing, right? In terms of the way that I've structured the way that I'm learning now, there's certain things that I'll be able to recall no matter what, whether it's actually in my brain or whether it's just purely going and having a bit of a look. So in fact, let me just open this up quickly. I could tell you very, 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 very quickly the kind of like almost exact day that actually happened. So the first day that Vienna took her steps was the 7th of February 2024.
Now, you're looking at some sort of note right now, aren't you?
Correct.
Now, if I had asked you to do that without the note, do you think you would have been able to? And does this mean that you're now dependent on notes for a lot of memory recall and things like this?
On the specificity of the details, absolutely. So there's differentiation, right? There's recall of where exactly I was and when the first steps were taken. That I could have told you without going and referring to the notes, but I would need the reference for preciseness, like the exact date, the exact way I slept, what I felt on that day, stuff like that. I'm not going to be able to recall, again, 12, 15 years in the future, and that's definitely something that I need to note down.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, another kind of little hypothetical I had was, what were you doing on July 31st of 2010, for example? If you had to try and recall that from memory, how granular do you think you'd be able to get with that?
Not very. Well, the only way, actually, so without any notes that I have, it would have to be just a really large ballpark estimation that I could not inspect any of the details of that particular day. It would have to be just a guesstimation of what I was doing in that year to kind of get a guidance. The only possible way would be, of the note taking at the time, would have been my gym session. So perhaps I could have reviewed my gym notes and kind of positioned myself in the day. But apart from that, not at all. I mean, for yourself, would you be able to do any level of deep contouring of that day?
Yeah, not particularly. I'd probably need some outside information. So my mind would go, Okay, 2010, that was when I was in my first year of university. So July, assuming, then I'd kind of go like, all right, university typically went for 12 weeks plus some extra weeks for revision and then the exam. So let's just say that's probably 4 months. That usually starts in March. So that'd be like March, April, May, June. So that means July would have probably been an off month. So I probably would have been on holiday, and soccer might have been around then. So it's potential I was thinking about soccer. And yeah, once again, on that actual day, if I brought up the calendar and saw what day it on, I'd maybe be able to go like, okay, this is where I was at in my life. These were the type of things that were important to me. So a typical day probably would have been, so for example, for me back then, I was definitely more of a shut-in. So it's very likely that and my sleeping schedule was really whack, so I would have been staying up super late, probably watching some anime or some manga or something like that, and almost certainly eating pies for lunch, because that was like a pie phase of my life. so that I can get a bit of specificity, I think, but not. Yeah, once again, like, does it actually matter if you can find out what you were doing on that day? No. That's kind of a bit beyond the point, but I do like the ability to be able to go, okay, yeah, I was in this rough stage of my life, and this is kind of what I was doing back then. Note wise, yeah. Now that I've got kind of some journaling, and then the podcast as well is immensely helpful. So for anything, looking back into 2019, September 15, 2019 and beyond, there's a lot more data points of note taking or things that I can reference than I have previously before that.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, that's kind of my view of it now in comparison to what it was before. Like, it would have been really awesome if I could have kept notes like I did in the past. And part of it in that now I keep very, very, very short notes, and obviously I can't see into her brain, but I keep notes on my daughter around what she's doing and what's been happening, because you never know. It's similar to what we're thinking about. Maybe it might be nice for her to reflect back, in many, many years' time, to go, hey, this is kind of what you thought, how you acted when you were 8 years old. This is what actually happened on that particular day. Not for recall. And I guess this is the important thing, because I would see the same with me. Again, does it matter what we did July 31st, 2010? Not really. The day that we created the podcast, like we were talking about, September 15th, I can remember parts of that day when we very first did that, and the computer crashing and having to redo it, all that sort of stuff. But I think in reviewing things from the past, it would be, at least to me and hopefully others, it would be more important around, that's maybe how I acted, this is how I thought, this is how I identified, as opposed to, I ate McDonald's, I ate 2 McDonald's burgers. And I think the way that I'm noting and reviewing my days now, it's much more attributed to that. Like, I've updated it now, Kyrin, so that my note taking there's 3 parts. One is a little journal a little quick journal of the day, because I was missing that, actually, just putting a little bit of a timeline of what happened, because if I was to reflect back on a previous day, whatever, like years by, if I just added this was today's learning or something, I don't have some sort of time of the day, as you say, it's kind of hard to position yourself into that day. So now I've got journal, learning, a learnings section, and I've stolen this kind of off the back of after I read Meditations myself, but I've been adding what I call, I call it philosophy, what do I call it? Philosophy. Oh, sorry, I gotta go back. It was summarized today with a philosophical retrospection on the day. And what I try and do there is just amalgamate everything of the day into kind of 1 or 2 short sentences, and that in itself is what I hope, again, in 10 years, 15 years time, when I'm reflecting on it, that gives me enough of that's what I was like. This is how I thought. Maybe this is the type of mental state I was in that particular moment in time. Because I think that's what's most important.
Are you going to get lazy and get AI to do that for you?
No, wait, I don't for that particular. No, so the daily notes. This I think it's important with AI usage. Um, Even with, and I tried it. I tried just like, I'll quickly type it into AI just to see if it like summarizes the day for me. But two things happened. One, when I do it myself, just like this is common knowledge, but I just kind of recall, and it helps the immediate action of why I do it rather than getting AI to do it. So there's kind of no point to getting AI to do it, given that a lot of the benefit is me reflecting on the day before and picking up the learnings and just generalizing it in my mind. But two, and look, this might change into the future, but honestly, and maybe Immortalites, you've seen this one sometimes, the way that Kyrin talks and produces some of his notes. I remember the ones that you produced from the previous episode around Brazil. Honestly, AI just doesn't do it well enough yet. It still seems clunky. It still feels a bit robotic. It doesn't feel like it's got soul in its writing, where the way that I can write still now, I'd still say it bests it in the soul and the feeling of what I'm trying to convey, versus sometimes it just feels a little bit too robotic, too clean, the ChatGPT or other equivalents.
Yeah, absolutely. And this goes to and so what Juan was referencing there was the chapter art, which is, if you look at it, it's just those actually took me a little bit to create. They weren't just one attempt and done. It took actually multiple iterations to try and get them, and they're not anything special. Why I'm reflecting upon this is, what I've noticed is I have actually I'm surprised at how good my recall is based on location. So the time period from 2018 to mid 2018 to mid 2019, my recall is pretty damn good. I'm actually so surprised at how accurately I can pick where I was and those ones, even kind of what I was doing on those days. So, and the reason for this is because I was traveling a lot. And so I was moving from one location to the next very rapidly, going from, hostel to hostel, city to city, country to country. And what I kind of find interesting about that is like, damn, I can actually really recall with that as well, the type of mentality I was going through, the types of thinking I was going through back then. And those are the things that I find valuable looking back and going, oh, okay, yeah, this is kind of what I used to be like, and what was that helpful or not for my life? It helps me remember some really great moments, some bad moments as well, and I just think the more moments that I can vividly recall, and in particular the feelings, not necessarily, once again, it doesn't really matter what I was doing on the 29th of August of 2018, but it does make me I just get more how would I say it makes me feel like my life has been lived more, in a sense, if I can remember these things, which is made me think like, oh damn, maybe that's something I need to introduce more into my life, or have it as more of a constant companion of just traveling, honestly, just going to new places and experiencing new things like that, because it does seem to be so dependent on location, not necessarily people I was with, the types of things I was doing, how I was feeling. A lot of it is just, this is where I was on that day, and then that helps me recall things.
Yeah, no, fair. 'Cause I was just trying to think if you would divide it into, is it I guess location does help, but what is the cause that location is a thing that helps you to remember more vividly? I think it's the difference, like the delta from the norm that your brain would be used to, and so then being able to put some more specifics into that day. Because I guess for me, over the last couple of weeks, when I say it's been full of things to do, but I have been largely situated in the same sort of places that I've been in the last couple of weeks and months before that. So, if I went back to the last couple of months, I honestly, right now, sitting here, wouldn't be able to like it all feels a little bit muddled all together, right? Like it's all kind of conjoined together into similar days. However, it takes me until I review, if I wanted to review some of my notes, then to be able to space that out and actually see the detail. However, even in that, where locations really haven't changed, it has been experiences for me that have allowed me to recall really quickly things. So, even though I've gone to the same pool with my daughter for swimming lessons, I can very vividly recall every single one of them down to very, 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 very specifics. And I think it's because the experiences each time have been that different from before as well. So I go, yes, obviously an environment change helps, but I think it's because the environment change causes a delta to the existing present thing that you've been doing or past doing, where, I think if I did swimming lessons with her maybe 200 times, maybe it'd start to muddle up a little bit, because then it's the same environment without too much of the deltas in experience.
Yeah, this is also true. But I would also say, for me personally, there is just something extra special about location though, because when I am traveling, a lot of time I'm doing the same thing. I'm training the same. I'll sometimes be eating the same. The routine can actually be very structured and very similar to what I would be doing back home, for example. But there was certainly periods where I was, testing out breakdancing, or I was going to this run club, or I was, donating blood more often and things like this. But they were all just, in my mind, they're kind of all just middled up into, that was 2020 through 2023, 24 even. So it's almost like there's just kind of 5 years of a lot of static in my life. And for me, those years are probably some of the hardest years for me to really recall, even though they're certainly closer than previous years, just because I was in the same place, I think it is. So this is where I once again, just getting back to those old journals I had. It was actually really nice reading some of them and realizing, for example, that I actually did some promotional work in 2013 in the 3-month gap, 4-month gap that I had from finishing uni into starting my work in February of 2014, working in the coal mine. And I went, holy crap, like I had completely forgotten that I did that. But now that I've read it here, I do remember joining up and then actually going to this Christmas party, having only worked 3 shifts or something, and being part of the company even after only working 3 shifts. And so there is some value for me certainly in recording things more in a what would you call this? Like just almost like a dispassionate manner of going, hey, this is what you actually did on these dates as well, because it can bring up some information of myself that I had forgotten, and which I actually do kind of find useful. I find that a really fun fact, going like, oh crap, like yeah, I remember that version of me and what he was about, what he was up to. Especially when I add explanatory things of kind of the internal self-consciousness that was going on, which probably would make awful podcasting, but is much more useful in terms of reflections and going back to things. How about anything else? Does music, for example, bring anything up in you that helps you remember feelings, perhaps, or even more concrete memories?
Trying to think back, music. In some parts, yeah. Very few, like the ones that just came rushing to me when you said that. Was it particularly music? Maybe even not, because one of the highlights I was just thinking in my mind was when I went to go see Dream Theater at the Brisbane Convention Centre. However, when I recalled that, I thought I was recalling it because of the sound, but it was more the exact like standing place I was, and this tall person that was in front of me and I couldn't see something, and the person that I went with. So I don't necessarily think that would have been music either. So no, I don't think sounds play a gigantic part. This was an interesting one. I'll play it back to you. What about smells? Because actually one of the most powerful recalls for a lot of people is smells, the different smells. And I can, hand on heart say I cannot recall anything from a, nose olfactory perspective, not even close.
I'll divulge my biggest weakness to the podcast listeners at home. This is my kryptonite. This is the if you want to kill me, this is the information you need. I've got a terrible sense of smell, man. I don't know if it's always been like this. I certainly remember. I don't know if this is. It's like one of those stupid random things I've always been able to do is if I turn my lips to like one side as if I'm kind of like smirking or like have just eaten something really sour, and then I inhale through my nose. I can make one of my nostrils just kind of close shut. And I think that's because there's actual like some sort of blockage up in my the top of my nose. I don't think that's.
No, you're gonna be like one of these stories where it's like you shove the crayon up your fucking nose when you're 4 years old, and we'll find it when you're 40.
I thought you were gonna say I'm gonna be one of those people like Alex or Mosey or something. He's got that band on their nose, and they're just
got the nose
wearing
patch starting
No. So is that related to sense of smell? I'm not sure, but I have a notoriously bad sense of smell, which has got me in trouble many a time where I've been wearing or have hung up, like old. There was one time at band camp, one time in a Colombian hostel in Cartagena. It is so hot there, man. Just balls dripping. The worst humidity I've ever felt, even worse than North Queensland, and. So this is kind of the Caribbean type heat. Imagine that. And when you're going to be so disgusted, everyone at home is going to be so disgusted with this. So what I would do is, because I was traveling and I had a lot more just unnecessary shit back then. I carried more books. I had my gymnastic rings. That wasn't unnecessary, but they certainly weighed more. So I just had a lot less space in my bag for clothes and things. So what I would do is to extend my clothes out. I would sometimes reuse things. Now, I wouldn't... maybe I would even reuse underwear. Oh, so gross. But I remember being in this place and I just got drenched with sweat. It was crazy. And everything, I could have wrung these clothes out. And I also remember at the time being, man, if I put these clothes in my bag, those ones I'm not going to wear again. These are way too hot, way too drenched in sweat. But I don't want to put them back in my bag because they're going to be heavier. And if I do this, multiple times, I'm going to be carrying around, an extra kg or two of just sweat in my clothes, in my bag before I actually get them washed. And so I had the bright idea, I'll just leave them in my in my fucking dorm room, hanging off the side of the bed, and that'll dry them out. And then that way I'll be able to, store them up and put them in my bag, and it'll be less weight. And so I did that, and I came back.
Unbelievable.
I came back from a walk, man, and I remember someone from the front desk was like, "Yo, dude, just so you know, we like put your clothes on the railing outside the room because someone complained of the smell." And I went, "Oh, yeah, that would make sense." but it wasn't me, intentionally being a jackass of going, I just feel like doing this at the inconvenience of others. If I knew it smelled and was going to inconvenience, if that had gone through my mind, I wouldn't have done it. But because it didn't go through my mind, I did it. And so then
you were like, yeah, of course.
Yeah, and so then of course I'm the jackass who, just stunk out his room basically. Funnily enough, that's probably only my fourth or fifth worst social etiquette that I've done in hostels. So yeah, more stories in the future for those.
I like that it's only the fourth and fifth one. Yeah, Kyrin's got some some doozies that he's pulled on people, I guess.
I've done a couple of bad things, man. But in any case, that's a really long-winded way of answering. No, smells don't. Who have you heard this from? I've never actually heard that before.
Huberman podcast and a couple of other places, I'm pretty sure. That's where I pulled out the word olfactory. But let's go recalling memory with smell. That's what it comes up with. Although we often look at pictures to remember the past, odors are actually better at helping us. Remember, brain scans show that odors bring us strong memories because of the brain regions that process them.
Yeah, okay. Well, I could certainly see the argument for it being better than pictures, because I certainly have a lot of pictures from when I was traveling, but they don't necessarily bring back strong memories more than perhaps thinking of someone who I knew at the time, or even the taste of food would probably do a little bit better for me. Music is relatively good because I tend to binge a song, and then that really captures it for that 1 or 2 weeks that I'm binging it, and that links it to a time and a place in particular. So Kelly's Tenderoni, which is a relatively average song in the grand scheme of things, certainly wasn't famous or very successful or anything. Just would have been in the top 300 pop songs of 2014 maybe, or 2013. But it can evoke some memories from that time where I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I remember that. This was Kyrin kind of emerging from his cocoon of university and going out into the real world. So sometimes music does that for me as well. And but then it's like, if I listen to it more in the future, it kind of eventually washes away those old memories, because then I'm re-listening to it. So it's kind of it's a double-edged sword where it can make me remember some things, but I'm going to forget them. So maybe it should be better if I should just save up all of these songs till near the end of my life, where I'm more in nostalgic mode and wanting to go, oh man, I remember this from the past, I remember this from the past, and then just bulk hit them all at the same time. Perhaps that's the way to do it.
just one final bring up.
The last hurrah.
Because otherwise then you get you listen to that song and let's say 7 critical moments and all of a sudden it's like, oh shit, where exactly was that song that it made this pinnacle like emotional change or like note in your life, and then then it goes away, like the specialness of it.
Yeah, for sure. The last one I wanted to talk about was, do you ever remember that Black Mirror episode where
I've never watched any Black Mirror episodes.
Okay, all right. So there's this guy who has the ability to basically, and everyone does, to just instantly get something from their mind, chuck it onto a TV screen, and they can watch from their mind's eye point of view what happened a week, a month, a year, 5 years ago, and it just it doesn't explain how it gets to that point, because you can't it's almost like if you recorded everything, and there is actually a guy who's done this. I've forgotten his name. I was looking him up once. He basically strapped a camera to himself and has recorded every moment of his life, beginning, I believe, in the 1990s, which was really impressive because he was wearing a full kind of camera rig, and came at a tremendous social cost, because when people realize that you're filming them, that their interaction with them all the time, it can offset people. Imagine if I just brought up my phone camera and was just holding it in front of your face whilst I was speaking with you. You're going to get weird interactions from people.
Absolutely.
But he wanted to do this for, I can't remember his exact reasoning for it, but I think it's something was like gaining enough data, perhaps for even AI related things. This was way before AI was cool. In at least in the interest it's gathered in the last 3 years.
I think I know the guy that you're talking. I think I know the guy that you're actually talking about.
He's a mega nerd. Just imagine the biggest nerd you can imagine.
I did a quick little Google, and even before that guy, there was another guy called John Nelson who was doing it, all the way until he died in 1981.
Okay.
1983.
Yeah,
And
I'm not sure which one I was thinking of because
No, I know the one I think you're thinking of, which is like I remember seeing a guy like strapping a camera, but just in case anyone wants to check this guy out, his name's John Nelson Sullivan, and he chronicled his life in downtown Manhattan arts and club scenes from 1983 until his death in 1989.
Okay.
And he basically carried a gigantic handheld video camera to video every single private moment.
and when I say everything, I mean these things are going. I believe they managed to do it 24/7. So even just had videos of them when they're asleep. Would that be something of interest to you if you had, let's just say, a modern day equivalent where you set up a little drone, or perhaps even eyeglasses which just record everything and it's not interfering with any actual interactions with other people? They perhaps don't know they're being recorded. You're the only one who knows. You'd find no interest or value in having this information.
Well, and see, I think this comes to the definition of information. There's a difference between information and knowledge. There's a difference between data and the connective points that make the data relevant, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just because, I'll give you an example, just because I give you, 22 million data points on a particular company means diddly squat until you
doesn't mean
put them
you're
together
going
or
to
do
get
something.
the stock price instantly or be able to predict where it'll be.
That's where it's a similar thing. If I could, click of a finger, there's an extension to your question that would make it more relevant, or I think maybe even better. But
Sure.
if I had, let's just say, a video camera in every single room in my household and recorded it 24/7, saved it up somewhere, would that be at all relevant? I don't think I'd ever go back and replay any of them unless it was 20 years in the future and you go, oh, do you remember that moment when you first took a step? Oh, we can go look that up. Let's go look at the video. And maybe you'd do that. Beyond that, though, not really. And I guess the reason I say that is there's no analysis. There's no resolution of what the moment actually means for oneself. It's the equivalent if you documented, you videoed yourself 24/7. Maybe some people have some interest of some aspects of it. What the heck do I care about? One moment that you had a chat with a random person on the street on 8 p.m. Right? Who cares? So it has to be relevant to yourself, and to do that beyond just something like being recorded, I think you have to analyze it or process it through your own mind. So in itself, I don't think it would be useful. What it might be useful, and again, there's using AI or other things beyond, is if you could somehow record yourself. Again, this is probably to some people would be like, whoa, hey, no way, I don't want to have all of this recording and analysis and whatever being done on me and my family or whatever it may be.
Black Mirror.
But if you could have like all these videos going, or something recording every moment, and then it summarize it for you in a really clean way, maybe in the same way that you might like to recall it yourself. So like at the end of the month, maybe you get a little, presentation created for you in terms of, this were your highlights for the month, and this really happened and it was good. You drank 4 coffees less on average per week because of this, something like that. Then maybe it starts getting valuable or usable, but there'll be some levels of extremes. But on its own, I think recording that to that level of volume is just a lot of data that you have to do something with.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. The only reason I myself would find any interest in it is if someone else can analyze it and find patterns that I do, or tell me things about myself that I didn't know, which they could only get through this kind of data, and be able to pass it that way. Because sure, I can look at it, but there's no, knowing that, I drink less coffee on days that I'm going through my menstrual period or something like that. If putting myself into another person's shoes there, obviously. then
Are you, Kyrin?
yeah, I've got some news, Juan.
What are you not telling me about your Brazilian trip?
Yeah, exactly right. I've got some news.
Surprise! I can give birth myself now.
Yeah, the Brazil trip actually is going to have a big moment for me because I've had a radical change. I actually was, funny thing, the thing that went through my mind the other day was like, I was messaging my dad and brother. I'm like, first time seeing them in 4 months. That's pretty long time. What if I just got my face tattooed and just did it, and then just rocked up and just acted completely as normal. I'm totally myself, Kyrin, except I've just got tattoos all over my face now. And what would be
as you do in Brazil.
Yeah, exactly right, exactly. And then just be like, that's what you do. But yeah, no, the recording. I mean, I can see some value in it. Some people do tend to like the Spotify recap, the YouTube recap of this is the songs that you listened to in the past year, and obviously that's there's podcasting versions of that as well. Some of the podcast hosts do that. There's obviously some value in that because they wouldn't do it if people didn't enjoy it, and Facebook going, this is what you did on this day, 5 years ago. So obviously there's some value in it, but is it how valuable is it other than just I remember that photo. It's not like it's going to trigger deep insights into, oh my God, I remember that memory, and now I need to go find out everything else about that. So yeah, I personally myself am more along your lines was, I even if there was an AI that was powerful enough, I'd need to be pretty confident that it was confidential and private and not being shared with the rest of the world, because that certainly is the kind of dystopian lens that some people would talk about. So yeah, that's a fair chunk there on just memory. So hopefully that helps someone, and maybe even help us, our future selves. We might look back at this in 5 years and just go, man, they were so wrong. I want to record everything now. Who knows?
Maybe, perhaps, but I think again, the more you have to process, the better you have to process it with something, right? So it's kind of right now the way that I try and document the things that I'm doing in general life. I've had to put some sort of processes and techniques and whatever to recall, to summarize. Otherwise, there would just be so much noise that it's almost like, what's the point of me doing this, right? Like, what is the point of me doing this? Because I'm never going to recall it. I'm never going to relook at it again, whatever. So the more and more, if I was trying to document many more hours of this, it's sort of like, it becomes pointless unless I elevate the way that I'm trying to recall things.
Yeah. I mean, I've got a journal from June 5th, 2013. That was the first day I started writing this. And that was also, incidentally, the first day that I ever did a cold approach on a girl. And was that actually the first day I got a girl's number? Or first day I got a girl's Facebook for sure. But in any case, important day in my mind because obviously I remember it. I haven't gone back to that journal, and I was writing in that every day for at least a year, I think, where I was doing daily entries, and then it moved to weekly, and then nowadays it's monthly, and the monthly ones, there's still a bit of info in there, but it's certainly not as granular. How much of that have I read? Almost zero. There's almost zero in there that I've read, but man, I know I'm going to go back to that one day and read through it and just get a whack in the face of the past version of me, because I wrote the highs, the lows, the darkest secrets, the everything went into that journal for a bit. Also my second kryptonite. So if you obtain that journal, man, I don't know what you're going to think of me. I don't know what I'll think of myself, honestly, reading that. Because there's certainly like, I know there's a lot of highs and a lot of lows in there. So you'd probably think it's a schizophrenic, honestly. So there is value in recording things in a kind of artificial manner as well, like that, which is recording it through just spoken word, like we're doing now with the podcast, through text, like I did then, keeping some music set aside, things like that, I think. And honestly, the one kind of like little outcome that I've had from this is more of a affirmation that travel is, there's a reason why I like to travel, and that it probably will continue to play a pretty big part of my life. I don't think I'm going to be the type of person who will stay in Australia for 4 years again and not, and 4 or 5 years during COVID and not leave the country. I don't think I'm going to be that type of person anymore, because honestly, when I look back at that 4 or 5 years, it's, it wasn't, there's other reasons for it, but it also wasn't like the most memorable or greatest period of my life then. So yeah.
You got to do the things. Yeah, you got to do the things that help you find a memorable life, man. Can't be doing the same thing as the old trite saying is that, if you live the same life or the same year 80 times, can you really call it a life?
Okay, I haven't heard that one, but
I heard that before. Yeah, it's basically like, if you're doing the same thing over and over again, and then you just multiply by all the years, at the end of it, are you really going to call that a life?
Yeah, so, makes sense.
Yeah, I think there's got to be enough variety, enough differences, enough learnings, enough whatever, however you want to see that, whether it's growth or whether you see it as variables. Otherwise, you just, what you'd see, just stuck in a rut. The other thing before we finish off as well, 2 parts. I was going to say, from a Boostergram perspective, man, I wasn't going to jump in there because I don't think we've got any.
No, we don't. Through. People got a sad puppy dog indeed for this week.
Sad puppy dog indeed. So I won't call that. We can call it out at the very end.
I'll
actually going to.
I'll bring up this one.
From
just Lucas wrote some stuff in the chat. He said, "Bro, I need to agree with you about the bugs. I went for a run and was so bad after 5. He means 5 p.m. Fuck the bugs." And then he says, "Because you are magnificent. Let's go." Yeah, man, the bugs in Brazil have been wild. I've been eaten tremendously this last week has just been off chops. Really, really hard to enjoy being outside between 3. For me, it's like 4. Yeah, 4 to 6ish is been pretty nasty. Yeah.
I love them. By love, I mean I absolutely detest bugs like that, man. I hate that.
Yeah.
No, the final point I was going to say as well, on any of those recalls as well, and if you listen to this and you're like, maybe I want to note things down or record things. The only other thing I'd actually say is, don't run into the problem that you spend a little bit of energy, but not too much energy, and then it becomes actually just useless. Like, useless information. And I can actually give you an example here. I went quickly back to... This is the 26th of April, 2020. And at that point, I was noting down my rankings of the day for mind, body, and soul.
Sure.
Like out of 1 to 5. And I'm going to give you a good day.
Mm-hmm.
Right? A good day. And here's a comment that I put. So basically, mind was 2, body was 3, soul was 4. I don't know roughly what that means. But this is my comment on the day. Undertook the podcast with new equipment. Met with friends. Did 2 sessions. A good leg one and another in stairs where I pushed. Eating was also great. Do you think I can recall that? There's no fuck. I have no clue. I have literally no clue what that even refers to.
Yeah.
There's the barest detail there. The following day and after that was real low. It was like mind 1, body 2, soul 2, with an average of 1.67. And I didn't take any comments. Looking back at like the whole of basically April and May of 2020, dude, I might as well not have taken any notes.
Exactly right.
I cannot recall just about any of these things, even when it says something about,
oh my God, I ate on that day. Oh my God, I went to sleep on that day. That's crazy.
Yeah, exactly. So the recall there is like just out of control, terrible, right? Whereas now when I review the ways that I'm noting down, I'll give you like a random one, right? Let's go 28th of August. So, again, a couple of weeks ago, but and I'll go with the philosophically retrospecting. I won't go into the other stuff. And that one I wrote, one day I will miss. In the moment, it all feels like torture. Is this the same for all entities or just humans? So, that sort of sentence for me, I can kind of recall, oh yeah, that's what I was thinking, that's how I was feeling, that's what I was looking about. Then I map it up to the actual little notes of what happened in the day, and I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense, and that's the average of my total mind, body, and soul. So there's going to be like enough data as well if you're trying to recall things. Otherwise, it just goes to shit. So in the example there, if I go back to some of my 2020, I can say that I was tracking it, but not well enough that I can recall anymore. And probably for me, realistically, just looking back in some of my notes, that only started happening about 2021. So it realistically took me probably a good year of just note taking to get into a rhythm of like, oh yeah, this is the amount of info I really need to be capturing. So most of 2020, I can say that I have captured it, but man, I'd be very hard pressed to try to bring up any detail.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the reason I stopped doing daily journal entries was because I would be writing for an hour and a half in the evenings. And the similar reason for why I stopped doing the dream journaling, because once you get good enough at remembering your dreams, you're remembering like 6 or 7 dreams a night, and it takes you 20, 30 minutes just to write them down, even if you're on a computer typing as fast as you can. So you got to find that balance between actually living your life and not just trying to remember the portions of your life that you have lived, and then do an extra step on top of that and be like, man, I was journaling for 1.5 hours this day. I remember the feeling of my fingers touching the keyboard as I was remembering that. You get into this kind of loop. Yeah, we've already talked about the boostgrams. People, come on, you need to help support the show, and also give us some content, give us some messages. So meremorstalspodcast.com/support. Use an app like Fountain or True Fans or Podverse. Podcast Guru is also very solid. One final thing I wanted to bring up, Juan, was what I've realized over these past couple of weeks is honestly it's Saturday here. Getting ready for the Saturday podcast with you has kind of been one of the highlights of my week. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm really looking forward to this. It's going to be awesome. Like I'll sometimes even be taking notes down half an hour after we've finished the last podcast, or expanding things out, or the next day. And it's been 5 years. We've missed a couple of weeks here and there, but I think more than 1,000 episodes across all of the podcasts, that ends up being, how much is that? That's like 200 episodes a year. How wild is that? Which is literally...
Well, how many technically, how many work days is there in a year? So if you wanted to be like, even though we do stuff on the weekends, but how many work days in a year you think?
Yeah, well, I mean, it'd be like 250, but then add in holidays, so you're probably looking at like 220 or something like that.
Yeah, so roughly it says 251 minus holidays, roughly about 13. So let's just go 238.
Sure.
Okay. So yeah, we're almost, if you want to look at it from a work perspective, we're basically putting out on average a podcast a day consistently on a work for the last 5 years.
Now
that's not something small to sneeze at.
No, now look, also a podcast does not take a full workday to put out for us. We're a bit more efficient than that, but yes, it is a lot of work. But the thing is, like, it is work, but it's also, man, it is just so easy. A podcast I've been following for a little bit, they were boosting in for a while, Beer Bourbon and Balderdash. They've unfortunately ended. They got to episode 108, and they're kind of like two guys. They're a bit older than us, but they pick topics. They have their show. They had mild amount of support, and I think life just got a little bit too much for them. They didn't particularly go into the details. They were just saying like, hey, we're just gonna have to end it here. We might be back in the future, but this potentially could just be the end of the show. And whilst a shame, I'm also like, yeah, you know what? There's kind of two sticking points. There's the sticking point of 3 to 20 episodes, and a lot of people don't make it beyond that. But I think there's also one where you get into a little bit later. It's maybe you're 100 or 200, and then you're just going like, I don't know. I don't know if I want to keep doing this, and or it's just like it's not giving as much joy. But man, I'm having so much fun still doing these, and honestly coming back, and I'm like, fuck yeah, Juan and I, we're gonna set aside a time on probably a Sunday morning, and it's gonna be awesome. I'm gonna really enjoy it. So Yeah, just really looking forward to that. And the last kind of bit here was just I think it's also one of the reasons it's been good is just telling yourself a kind of flexible story. So right at the start of this year, after a pretty miserable 2023, and honestly, portions of 2020 through and beyond, I think because I had such a highlight of a year in 2018 and 19 that it put those years into kind of stark contrast and was like, oh, these aren't as great. But this year I told myself at the start of the year, I'm like, 2014 is going to be a great year. I'm putting the positive vibes out there. I'm going to make sure it's happened. Now, I also said this at the time that I knew Mum was, kind of getting towards she was getting progressively worse and it was going to get really bad. I knew that at the same time. And it's kind of funny because I'm like, whilst hard, it's in the past now, and so I can move on from that really crappy stuff that happened in 2023. So it's sort of like putting that in a box and saying like, hey, that's just going to stay here. I'm going to make this next year good. And whilst there was certainly hard parts of this year, I know I'm going to look back on 2024 and be like, man, that was a banger of a year. This was way better than the couple of years prior. And it's kind of funny because I think it's just shown in a way just how having the positive mindset can help. I got some news the other day from a loved one, which really scared me. It was the kind of news where it's like it implied that like, oh shit, there could be like something seriously wrong here. And I'm so impressed with how I handled it on that day, which was, I saw it taking up my mental space, and it was already, my mind was starting to think like, oh, this could happen in the future, so I'll do this, but that'll probably mean this, and this could change these plans. And I could see my mind getting into this kind of negative spiral. And I went to the calisthenic park. There was fucking bugs there, and I was already I was so shitted off already. I'm like starting to get angry. I'm like, all right, I need to just go for a walk. I hate missing a session. I feel fine physically, but mentally I'm not in a great place. And so I went for a walk, and I was just impressed with the kind of attitude I managed to convince myself, which was like, look, whatever happens, there's a potential that this isn't a drama. And guess what? It turned out to not be a drama, and everything is good with that loved one. So it's like, okay, this is great. I kind of just went, all right, wait, this really just does show just having a bit of positivity, looking at it's such like lame advice or lame observation of, oh, look on the bright side of life, doo-doo. But how does this all work? Because I knew objectively, in a way, objectively, this is going to be a shit year. Mum was going to pass away. There was almost a 100% guarantee of that. But I also was like, oh, well, we also can kind of see how we only remember a little bit of each year, and it's the positive feelings, a lot of it. Obviously, I'm going to remember Mum's passing and the memorial service and a bit at the time around then. But I think I will look back in 2014, and it won't be 2024, and it's not going to be a year of abject misery of the worst of my life. It's going to be, that was a hard year for some aspects, but I had also some really great moments in that year. I got to travel to Brazil, got to meet podcasting people in real life. Who knows what's going to happen in the end of this year? I'm looking forward to it. And so I think it's kind of like it's almost like I'm playing a trick on myself, which is the recency bias, also known as the Bader-Meinhof phenomenon. I think recency bias.
Never heard that before.
Yeah, aka recency bias, also known as, but not really. Which is, I'll tell myself good things will happen this year, and then every time they do, I'll kind of take a bit of a note of it, and I'll be more likely to recall like, oh yeah, I remember I said 2024 would be a good year, and yeah, look, that great thing happened there, and that great thing happened there, and so I think it was a good kickstart and way of just reframing things, using this as a tool for kickstarting optimism, and positivity and just getting a flywheel going of like, oh yeah, you know what? Just through my thoughts alone, I can turn I can't make a bad thing good, but I can frame the bad thing so that it's not going to be a story for the rest of my life that will put me in a position of like victimhood or moping or depression or anything like that. So just a little I don't know, observation there from something that I did earlier this year, or earlier at the end of last year, of saying like, I'm going to make this a great year. And yeah, it has been a good year. And every time I say it's a great year and it's a good year and it's going to be a good year, like it's just reinforcing that further. So just a reminder there for some optimism, because you can there's certainly enough gloom and doom out in the world.
Absolutely. All right, I think we've gone a little bit long there, but that's okay. Once again, and although that has been a good one, I have enjoyed this conversation. Honestly, the final point I was going to say, just on top of that, from your side and from me, was even talking about just the podcast in general. I had to have quite a bit of time off just on doing podcast stuff, and I pre-recorded the August learnings, I guess.
Beautiful.
And it was fun to do again. It was really fun. It was engaging, and kind of reminded me once again. We're looking back now at 5 years of doing the podcast, and sometimes it's nice to take a bit of time away to kind of recall why it is so fun to do it as well. So when you looking at right now from a memory perspective, and we talked a lot about memories and thoughts and ideas and recalls, if you want to hunt it out, go find the first episode of the Mere Mortals podcast. You will be pleasantly surprised about the changes, the improvements, the ways we interact, the reduction in ums and ahs. Or perhaps we've gone worse.
Yeah, this is possible. We've just deluded ourselves into thinking it's good.
Like, oh man, you should have been like the first one. Once again, I have yet to pull out a better joke than one of our early days when Kyrin tried to explain to me if I'd ever laid down with my eyes closed, and I had to remind him that I have indeed slept before.
The thing was, I was comparing laying down. This is when I was meditating a bunch, and I was comparing meditating laying down to yeah, well, I did ask you that, and you're like, yeah, I have slept before. But there was another really funny one, which was when I was comparing laying down and meditating to the Navy SEAL training, and you're just like, what the fuck is wrong with you? But also, if you're going back, I mean, check out episodes 100 or 200 when we were outside. Maybe it was even more, 100 or 300. Was when we were outside and doing those pre-record. Some of those were great. There was some really good episodes in there. And even in terms of like visual quality, I look at them like, I'm still really proud of that. And they never kind of kicked off or went viral or anything. But I'm like, damn, there's some pretty unique episodes out there, out in the park. Good camera quality, good sound quality as well. Yeah, worth checking out. If you haven't done that before. Yeah, for sure. Beauty.
All right, Immortalized Kyrin, take us away.
Yeah, yep. So Juan's got an episode for this next week lined up, because I will be literally mid-flight to New Zealand. I believe the next one after that I will be able to do with you probably around the normal time, Sunday, because that'll be thankfully closer to midday-ish on a Sunday in Kiwi time. Or maybe 9 a.m. or something like that. So that's certainly doable. So fingers crossed for that one. And then the one after that, I'll be back in Australia. So business as usual. Just check out the live timings if you're tuning in live, because they might slightly change, but hopefully roughly around the same. But yeah, that's it. Juan, you won. You take us out.
Whoa! All right, Immortalized. Thank you very much for tuning in for a little bit of a longer one. I hope you have enjoyed wherever you are in the world. Enjoy yourselves. Juan out.
Kyrin out. Bye.